But conferences and diplomatic maneuverings in distant European capitals often drew lines to deal with tensions among the colonizing powers rather than addressing internal African issues. And by the way, I kind of share things, so if anybody wants this PowerPoint, I'll email it to you. You write your email down, I'll send it to you, okay? So there's a few sources I've used. So the colonial borders were drawn, and this is what happened. This is what they look like. You notice the straight lines up here? Those are rulers. Down here they sort of follow geographic features and some bargaining with different groups. It's a real mess. So you got people pushed together who never should have been together, and you got people pushed apart who should have been together. That's the borders. So are they relevant today? That's what we need to follow. And by the way, another thing on the colonial things, they built railroads. That's a plus. If you ask, was colonialism good or was it bad? There's a guy named Boahen who wrote, I think he's Ghanaian, he wrote a book saying a little good and a little bad. For example, you get railroads. They didn't have that before colonial powers. But look how they go. They go straight into the country. They don't connect the countries. And that was to get stuff out and get it to the port. Mercantilism, the old thing, build up your economy at the expense of others, get that stuff out. It's like there's a giant sucking straw, and Europe is sucking out all the minerals and all the wealth they can possibly get out. Now eventually they decided, well, wait a minute, we've got enough, we're okay. And this is what it looks like with the names. I have a foster daughter from Madagascar. It floated away from Africa at one point. I don't know how long ago. Any geologists in here or anthropologists? It was a long time ago, but if you go to Madagascar, just before it started floating away, these little things called lemurs jumped on at Madagascar, and all their enemies didn't catch up to them. So you find lemurs. That's, I think, the only place you find them, because their natural enemies aren't there. How many people have heard of Max Weber? Whoa! Yes, I know you have. Okay. I'm not an expert on Max Weber. He did two things. He did a lot about what the state is about, and then he wrote these horribly boring books about administration. And when I was doing my PhD, I said, you know, one day I'm going to the top floor of the library at the University of Florida. I'm going to check out the books on the administration, which is really what he wrote about. And there were 3 big volumes, and it was a hot afternoon, and the air conditioning wasn't working too well up there. And I slowly fell asleep. I don't know a lot about Max Weber and his administration, but at least one statement has come through history as something that often gets quoted. This is not the exact quote, but it's the meaning. A state. How many people knew what the word state means? I mean, suddenly you have an idea what it is. Anybody? Anybody else? It's kind of a wishy term, isn't it? I mean,
I know what it means.
Good. I'm glad. Did you? Oh, neither did I, and I was already getting my PhD. You know, it's a concept. It's not so much the physical thing as in his definition. It's a concept. A state is kind of where you have control. If we had control, this group here right at the table, and we could control this territory with a legitimate use of power, legitimate. That's a problem sometimes. If we could control this with a legitimate use of power, we would have a state. Yeah? There's a lot of twists and turns you can add to that. But basically, when we get back to borders, it means in Africa, a state is something that controls, legitimately, supposedly, the territory, which gets back to borders. And here's where I want to make a suggestion. I understand somebody made the same suggestion, but I didn't talk to him when he talked about borders last time. The whole European concept of borders doesn't work in Africa. It doesn't work. Max Weber probably never even knew anything about Africa. Maybe he did, I don't know. But he's writing about Europe. And in Europe, in general, the concept of power was build your borders strong. Protect your borders. Be in control of your borders. Because you got enemies. It was Europe, you know? I mean, people were running all over the place, taking land and claiming it for themselves. So you protect your borders. In Africa, it was just the reverse. In Africa, you had kingdoms, cities, everything was concentrated in a state. Okay? And even today, it's true. You start out from the capital, and you start walking, driving, whatever you want to do. And the further you get out, the less sort of administrative control you see. Because they weren't worried about the borders, they were worried about the city centers. The power was in the center. It's just the opposite. Okay? And even today, you don't find great. There's an author named Herbst, H-E-R-B-S-T. He did this when he was an assistant professor, which means he was fairly new. And his thesis was that basically states have less power in African states towards the border. And I'll explain that in a minute, because it's true. I want to ask, I'll give you one other thing. And I've just explained that ahead of time. And that's what I said. And also, I'm going to stop in just a minute and ask you some questions on this. But today, borders, if you go up and look for them, you got border posts. If you don't look for them, you got sand or woods. And a lot of people walk through the woods in the sand. And they get to the next country. Why? Because their cousin lives over the line. And this stupid line that was drawn by the Europeans doesn't make any sense. It's like you and I are brother and sister, only you got married and living down over there in Orange City. But suddenly the colonial borders have us separated. You think I'm going to go to a border post and check my stamp every time I come to visit you? No way. I'm just going to walk around. So I'll tell you, when we were in Nigeria on this hitchhiking trip, we were up on top of a truck, which is generally where I was, but this time Betty and I were both up there. And we get to the border between Nigeria and, well, we're in Cameroon and we get to the Nigerian border. And it's late at night. And down there, they're checking all the stuff of the driver and everything. And I'm up on the top and just waking up and I say, oh, I got to get down and check in. They say, no, be quiet. Go to sleep. They find out there's Americans up here. It'll take you a long time to get through. A lot of formalities. We're all tired. We want to go in. So I snuck into Nigeria illegally. And the next morning, we wake up. We're sleeping in a bus station outside on the cement. And we wake up in the morning, throw the off and all the flies and everything. And we go down to the station where this little border guy is sitting. Which they have an office in the town. He's got his little stamp. And we just said, can you check us in? We're thinking, no, it's a military kind of arrangement. What are they going to do? He says, welcome to Nigeria. Boom. Stamps us in. So much for the Nigerian border. Sudan, as a reporter, I used to go up to Sudan and cover the war up there. We got bombed one time. Well, they missed us by about 800 yards and hurt a little girl. Crazy place. They have these bombs. They roll them out. It's a Soviet Anatol plane, and they sort of kick the bombs out. It's very crude. And so they don't have very good aim. So anyway, we got up, and we got an invitation from the rebels. They said, you're waiting in northern Kenya, where we were, just by the border, and we're going tonight. You want to come with us or not? So, do you want to go? You're a journalist? You say, obviously, yes. So we jump in the jeeps with them, and we take off across the border without checking out. There's no place to check in Sudan. It's a war. Well, we didn't even check out. So we go around, and on the way back, I was driving a vehicle that didn't have any battery in it. They said, look, we need an extra driver. It's a UN vehicle. Can you drive it? I said, I can drive it, yeah, but no battery. They said, just don't let the motor die. And if you, oh, by the way, they say, if you come down to a road where you see no tracks, stop. It's probably mine. Go back the other way and go another way. So we're driving along and see no tracks and stop. Go to the left. Go right through a rebel camp. It's way below. No problem. We get to the border, and I say, I really do need to check in. I think if anybody's seen me, now I'm illegally in the Sudan, now I'm going to be illegally back in Kenya. So we go and rouse the border guy who's in his office, and I say, I need to check in. He said, "You didn't check out!" Yeah, I said, we were in a hurry and rebels, I said, ball this out, and finally I said, "Welcome back." So much for the border in Sudan. In Rwanda, when I was covering the war down there, we got to the airport, there's nobody there. I mean, the war is there now. And so we walk on through. We came again, we walk on through. The third time, I remember some guy over in the corner saying, "Je suis ici. I'm over here with my little douane stamp. You know, you got to check in." We said, "Catch you later," you know, and we just kept going. So much for the border in Rwanda. Don't try that today. Malawi was a funnier story. I have a friend in Malawi. He's a very poor guy. When we lived in Tanzania years ago, he's a friend. And I wanted to go see him. He lives in Malawi. But the border was closed, officially closed. The main road, I don't know why, some economic argument. But they said, "But if you follow the smuggler's route, you can get in." I said, "Okay." So we followed this guy, had a little bag, he's smuggling soap. I mean, a small town smuggler. So we walk for most of the day. We get into Malawi, and there's a bus. So we hail the bus. My wife and I get on. And we don't have Malawian money, obviously. And I said, "Can I pay in dollar?" And this guy is very proper. He says, "No, you've got to get off." You know, and we're still a long way from anywhere. Finally, a guy from the back of the bus said, "Here, just use my money." So we got down to a border, the official border station. And they said, "You can't go in." Oh no, it was worse than that. My wife said, "I work as a photographer." And she said to me, "Tell them you work for the church," because I work for the Christian Science Monitor. Which is true. So what did I say? She said, "Don't tell them you're a journalist." So what happens? "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a journalist for the Christian Science Monitor." "You what?" "They don't like journalists?" They said, "You got to go back." Oh, I'm thinking, no. I want to call my ambassador. I'm on vacation. And they said, "We don't know what to do with you, but you can sleep out there tonight. We'll deal with you in the morning." So we put up our little tent, and I was refusing to go until I talked to my ambassador. A military jeep pulls up in the morning, and the guy gets off. He says, "Excuse me, do I understand that you are refusing to leave?" And you know, something goes through your head. You think, "Wait a minute, this is the time when you give up." You know, there are moments when you got to back off. So I said, "No, sir. No, sir, we're not refusing. If we have to leave, we'll leave, you know." He says, "You do." And he took us in the jeep down to the border station where they gave us tea, sent us over to Tanzania, and the Tanzania guy said, "Welcome back to Tanzania. You know, those Malawians are just terrible." So, I mean, borders are okay, but you can get around them. Let me ask a question, because we're going to go to another point, sovereignty. That means it's mine, stay out. Where are we so far? Any of this making any sense? Is it? You sure? Garcia, man of truth. Dime. ¿Explico? John?
Sure.
Somebody say no. Ask a question.
Can you describe more the difference between sovereignty and
Describe what?
more of the difference between sovereignty and state and their relationship?
Yes, I will. In just a minute.
Oh.
I'm going to do that. Anybody else? You don't have to be experts. Do borders make sense so far or not? So far from what you know, are borders important or not important?
Depends.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if it was so easy for you to get around the border areas, then why is it even efficient? Like you could just see.
Well, because they collect a lot of taxes, for one thing. They don't have a European Union, so when you go through, usually, if you got stuff, you pay taxes, you've got to have a visa, there's money involved, and also, I'm not saying that borders are totally, you know, high everybody, because you may be smuggling arms in, you know, and, you know, governments don't like that. So, there's still a lot of control. When we were hitchhiking across Africa, we went legally through all the borders. Didn't have any trouble, though. What about the Somali-Kenya border? Does that make any sense?
My husband said that they would just say, you know, I'm a member of this clan, you bring all the clan members and you go across, there's no...
She says you don't need a passport, you just have to be in the right clan.
Yes, thank you.
If there's the right clan, And Somalia is made up of clans. It's like tribes, but they call them clans. And if you got a clan guy at the border, you'll get through okay. If you don't, you might not. You know.
Well, it would seem that that borders in Africa without a central government are a different kind of breed than everybody would be used to.
Yeah, Somalia is a good example.
Well, I mean a central government control in Africa, like when we're talking about states of Africa.
Yeah. Any other questions? We'll go to sovereignty for a minute. Okay. Sovereignty is sometimes made into a long, complicated topic, and I'm going to be very short about it. If I've got sovereignty over this table, you better stay out. That's mine. The borders mean inside, I do what I want. It's sovereign, okay? It's, I guess it's a cliche, but it's a sovereign kind of thing. That doesn't make sense. It's a political definition of control. If your country is sovereign, other countries have to respect that sovereignty. Believe me, we are sovereign, and we don't want anybody coming into our country and doing anything we don't want done. You know, it's our country. You stay out. You know, Africans same way. And in fact, as bad as these borders were, and as colonial as they were, once people got in power, they said, we're going to defend every inch of that stuff. You know, it's ours, and we don't want to lose a bit of it. You never had an African leader saying, oh, would you like to take a piece of my land? Didn't happen. It's sovereign. And here's the catch. I study human rights. I mean, I guess it's because I have a passion and I don't like to see people hurt. But if I'm in a country and I start killing and torturing my people, the Organization of African Unity finds out quick enough. But they don't do anything. They existed up until about 2001. That Organization of African Unity, OAU, would sit there and say, oh my God, isn't it terrible? They're torturing people in Uganda, oh dear. It's sovereign, otherwise we could stop it, oh dear. But, you know, they're all thinking, yeah, but what if we have a human rights problem in our country? We don't want anybody coming in and telling us what to do. So they all agreed not to do anything. And people got tortured and killed, and human rights abuses were bad. Along comes 2001, and you got a new idea, a new organization. Times have changed. Human rights is a more popular topic. And the word is sovereignty, okay, except where human rights are involved. That's a big change. That's a really big change. It means you can't, as a dictator, are you a dictator? On campus? No, I'm a friendly guy. Where are you from?
From Spain.
Spain, oh, ¿cómo estás? Podemos hablar después. Okay. If he is in Spain as a dictator, let's say he's in Africa, and he is treating his people badly. And of course, ordinary people like you and I begin to get that story out. Journalists and other people. I write about those kinds of people. They're kind of heroes in a sense. Not angels, but heroes. He's going to have a problem. He's going to say sovereignty, and the AU and other organizations like NATO and others will come in and say, sorry, that's the old game. This is the new game. Human rights do count. And we should all celebrate that. We should celebrate that. Because it doesn't always work. For example, the African Union forces are in Somalia, and that country's a mess. And this guy looks like he couldn't really run very fast. But he's there. Okay? Does that help a little bit on sovereignty? Backbencher?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, it does.
Questions on sovereignty? It's an important concept. Yes.
Wouldn't that mean the end of sovereignty, though?
Pardon?
Wouldn't that mean the end of sovereignty? The fact is that you can't get away with doing whatever you want within your own borders means you have no sovereignty. None whatsoever. If you do something that some higher power disagrees with, they can go and stop you if they felt like it.
Yeah.
So effectively, it's not that sovereignty is better. Yeah, sovereignty, no, we don't do that anymore.
Sovereignty is a weakened concept, you're right. It is a weakened concept. It's still there, I mean, people don't interfere with everything, but if the human rights gets really bad, they have the opportunity to come in where they didn't used to want to be. I mean, Tanzania went into Uganda years ago when they were messing with people, and Tanzania claimed part of its territory. So they were the early ones to break that concept down. It's still there, but it's weaker. Okay, borders are still important in Africa. I don't want to say that it's open season to just go anywhere. They're still there. They are still guarded, and they are still important. And leaders are jealous about their territory. And here's an example. I don't know if anybody caught this, but a few years back, Eritrea, which used to be part of Ethiopia, broke free. Okay, so you got Eritrea and you get Ethiopia, run by distant cousins. You know, they should get along. You know, they're impressive people to interview. That's fine, but they're very jealous over their territory, and they fought for about 2 years, a war which made to me made absolutely no sense. This tiny little village on the border. I'm thinking, what are they doing? It's a village. Well, they did it because